believe what was happening. My boss, Richard, had found out about my long-distance relationship with Lisa, a sweet and intelligent woman working in one of our remote offices. Richard was a control freak, a manipulator who enjoyed playing with people's lives. The worst part? He was married to another co-worker, Sarah, but he was unfaithful, and his infidelity knew no bounds. He had a sinister hobby, too, taking pictures of his conquests, relishing in the aftermath of his sordid victories. He'd then parade these explicit photos on the production floor, bragging about his exploits to anyone who would listen. But when Richard set his sights on Lisa during one of his trips to her office, things took a turn for the worse. Lisa had rejected his advances, and that in Richard's twisted world was a sin punishable by termination. He concocted a web of lies, successfully getting her fired. I was furious, and so was Lisa. We knew Richard had a stash of these scandalous photos in his office. He couldn't risk keeping them at home, where his wife might stumble upon them. So we hatched a plan and was determined to get revenge. It took weeks of patience and planning, but I knew it would be worth it. One Saturday, I was working on some remote project when the opportunity finally presented itself. The cleaning lady unlocked Richard's office, and I seized the chance. Pretending to measure something on blueprints, I waited until she left, asking me to close the door behind me. Alone in his office, I rifled through his desk, my heart pounding in my chest. And there it was, buried deep within one of the drawers, a stack of photos 4 inches high. I carefully slipped them into a manila envelope and stashed it in my bag. Now all that was left was to bide my time until Richard's next trip. When it came, I decided to take the afternoon off under the pretense of a long lunch. I had a dozen pictures, each one showing Richard's face, each with a different woman. The women all had dark or red hair, starkly different from Sarah, his blonde wife. I hopped in my car and drove to Richard's hometown, making a stop at the nearest post office to his house. I mailed the pictures to his wife, leaving no return address. It was a risky move, but I couldn't let Richard's deeds go unpunished. Weeks went by, and the tension at the office was palpable. Rumours swirled about Sarah divorcing Richard. I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction mixed with anxiety. What would Richard do when he found out? I had a plan for that too. I had collected enough evidence of his misconduct over the years, and I was prepared to use it to my advantage. Finally, one day, Richard disappeared from the office without warning. We heard through the grapevine that Sarah had filed for divorce, and her lawyer had managed to send Richard to the other side of the world, away from the life he had built, and away from any potential harm he might bring to us. Lisa and I breathed a collective sigh of relief. We were free from Richard's tyranny, and justice had been served. As the dust settled, I realized that sometimes revenge wasn't just sweet. It was the only way to protect the ones you love. With Richard out of our lives and Sarah rebuilding her life post-divorce, Lisa and I could finally breathe easy. Our relationship blossomed, and we found comfort in knowing that we were free from the shadow of my former boss. We decided to take our relationship to the next level, and I proposed to Lisa. She said yes, and we began planning our wedding. As the big day approached, we found ourselves reflecting on the tumultuous events that had brought us to this point. Our love had weathered a storm, and we were stronger for it. The threat of Richard's return hung over us like a dark cloud, but we were determined not to let it cast a shadow on our happiness. One evening, as we sat on the couch, sipping wine and discussing our wedding plans, Lisa turned to me with a mischievous smile.
You know, we should invite Sarah to our wedding. She deserves to share in our happiness after everything she's been through.
I nodded thoughtfully. It was an unexpected idea, but one that resonated with me. Sarah had been a victim of Richard's deceit as much as we had. You're right. Let's extend an invitation to her. So we reached out to Sarah, who accepted our invitation with grace and gratitude. As the day of the wedding arrived, there was a sense of anticipation in the air. Our friends and family gathered at a picturesque garden venue, where the sun shone brightly, casting a warm glow over the proceeding. The ceremony was a beautiful affair, filled with heartfelt vows, tears of joy, and laughter. Sarah, dressed in an elegant lavender gown, sat in a front row, her eyes sparkling with happiness for us. It was a poignant moment when Lisa and I exchanged our vows, promising to support and protect each other, come what may. After the ceremony, as we mingled with our guests during the reception, I noticed Sarah sitting alone at a table, a smile slightly wistful. I approached her and offered her a seat next to us. "Sarah, we wanted to thank you for being here today. You've been through so much, and we hope this wedding can bring some joy into your life." Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes as she took my hand.
I can't express how much this means to me. Your kindness has helped me heal, and I wish you both a lifetime of happiness together.
As the night wore on, we danced, toasted, and celebrated with our loved ones. Sarah joined in the festivities, and it was heartwarming to see her smile and laugh, her burdens momentarily lifted. Weeks turned into months, and Lisa and I settled into married life. We both continued to excel in our careers, free from the oppressive atmosphere that had once dominated our workplace. The spectre of Richard's return remained in the back of our minds, but as time passed, it seemed increasingly unlikely. One sunny afternoon, as I was working in my home office, I received an unexpected email. It was from an anonymous sender, and the subject line simply read, "You may want to know." Intrigued, I opened the email to find a series of photographs attached. They were recent pictures of Richard, seemingly living a life of solitude in a remote village halfway across the world. I couldn't help but feel a pang of pity for him. It appeared that he had been ostracized, perhaps even shunned by the community he now lived in. The photos showed him alone, a far cry from the charismatic and confident man I had once known. The anonymous letter contained no explanation, and I wondered who had sent it and why. But one thing was clear. Richard's life had taken an unexpected turn. I decided to share the photos with Lisa, and he agreed to leave him alone. After all, he had been sent to the other side of the world for his misdeeds, and he seemed to be facing the consequences of his actions. Life continued to go on as normal. Lisa and I were enjoying our marriage. Our careers were flourishing. Our bond grew stronger each day. We leaned on each other for support and love. We put the past behind us, or so it seemed to us. One evening, as we were having dinner at a cozy Italian restaurant, Lisa received a phone call. Her facial expression went from joyful to surprised, then to curious and concerned. She ended the call and turned to me wide-eyed.
That was Sarah. She's in town and wants to meet us.
I raised an eyebrow. Sarah had moved away after her divorce from Richard, and we hadn't heard from her since our wedding day. Is everything okay?
I'm not sure, but she said it's important and wants to meet us tomorrow.
The rest of our dinner was filled with speculation as to what could have caused Sarah's sudden return. We couldn't help but wonder if it had something to do with Richard, whose unexpected photos from the other side of the world still haunted our thoughts. The next day, we met Sarah at one of the quaint cafes. She looked more energetic than we'd seen her in years, a newfound sense of purpose and determination shining in her eyes.
Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. I came back because there's something you both need to know.
We exchanged perplexed glances, not realizing what she was going to say.
Richard, he's not the same person he used to be. After the divorce and everything that's happened, he's hit rock bottom. He's apologized to me a lot. He's trying to get me back. He's working on himself, trying to get better.
I couldn't hide my skepticism. After all, Richard had caused so much pain and turmoil in our lives. But I remained silent, giving Sarah the opportunity to tell me further.
He contacted me a few months ago. He was broken, lonely, and full of remorse for the way he had treated you both and me. He's been in therapy and is trying to change. He sends me letters every morning apologizing. I love him too, and there is no way I can be without him. There's an emptiness on my soul without this man, no matter how bad I feel after his cheating. I decided to give him a second chance.
Lisa and I exchanged another look that was filled with a mixture of surprise and disbelief.
Richard wants to apologize to both of you too. He knows he can never fully redeem himself, but he wants to try. He's coming to town and asks if you'll agree to meet with him.
The thought of seeing Richard again sent shivers down my spine. I'd spent years putting the past behind me, and I wasn't sure I was ready to face him. But I also couldn't ignore the possibility of redemption and forgiveness. After a long discussion with Sarah, we decided to meet Richard. We chose a neutral place, a park where we had once had fond memories before everything went wrong. Sarah promised to be there as well. The day of the meeting came, and as we stood in the park, I was undaunted. Lisa squeezed my hand tightly, giving me a calming anchor. Sarah was the first to arrive and watched us with a mixture of hope and anxiety. A few minutes later, Richard appeared, noticeably different from the man I knew. He looked older, more haggard and resigned to the hardships of life. His gaze met mine, and there was genuine remorse in his eyes. We all sat down and, for the first time in many years, began a frank and heartfelt conversation. Richard apologized for his actions, admitting that he had hurt us. He talked about his journey of self-discovery and the steps he had taken to change his life. During the course of the conversation, it became clear that Richard had changed. He no longer had the arrogance and manipulative tendencies that had characterized him in the past. Instead, he became like a man seeking redemption and forgiveness. It wasn't an easy decision, but by the end of our meeting, Lisa and I found the strength to forgive Richard. For Sarah, he also asked for forgiveness, and it was evident that she found comfort in the process. In the years that followed, Richard worked tirelessly to make amends, not only to us, but to others he had wronged in his life. Life continued to unfold for Lisa, Sarah, and me in ways we could never have imagined. Richard stayed true to his path of redemption, and his transformation inspired others to find a better way. It seemed to us for now, until we found him at park. He was making out with some new girl. It wasn't Sarah, and that's when we realized that people don't change. They never do. Sarah found out about it, of course, but she let us know to stay out of their lives. Apparently, she couldn't let him go any more, and would turn a painful blind eye to his cheating.